Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about something that I came across, and it really gave me a lot of epiphanies. It explains a lot of things that we observe, and that's one of the beautiful things when you start looking into exercise science. There's stuff that we as lifters and coaches, things that we've observed in our lifters, our athletes, our clients, ourselves, our friends, because at this point in the game, our friends are often coaches and athletes and things. That when you see data, it starts to make sense. And that is something that was noted about both training volumes as well as why one of the big factors of why we grow slower and slower and slower the longer we lift. Okay? And a reason why also we do seem to be able to continue to get stronger over the years, year after year after year also, even when the growth itself is relatively slow, right? In some cases, barely trackable. And that was noted that when it came to muscle fibers, that the longer we train, the more we max out the absolute size that a lot of different intermediate fibers can get to. In other words, I think most people grasp this. Look, you have slow twitch fibers and fast twitch fibers, but that's not the two categories. There's about 20 categories in between the two extremes of those. And the slowest ones are the ones you do for endurance and everyday stuff. In other words, the muscles that you use to walk around. Okay? Muscles that you use to wave your hand in the air, to type with. These are not power. There's no power. They're all stamina. You can literally flex them thousands and thousands of times in a day. Okay, we understand this. Thousands. Without them wearing out. That's why you can walk. That's why you can walk long distance. Okay. Because of our normal movements, getting up and walking, we have generally maxed out the hypertrophy of the slowest twitch fibers, right? Just your ability to walk. If you walk every day, and I didn't say walk real far, if you get up and walk at all, you've largely maxed out their hypertrophy. They're good at just repeating the same movement, okay? And what we find is that over time, there's an upper threshold. The majority of our muscle fibers are in that category. But over time, a lot of these muscles, they have a very finite amount of size they'll gain. Okay? And the longer we train, the more those intermediate and slower twitch fibers grow, but then they stop. And they hypertrophy from lower threshold to work. In other words, you can maximally hypertrophy some of the slower twitch ones with very light weights early on in your training, so on and so forth. As we go up the chain to the faster twitch, the fastest twitch ones are the only ones with really close to a limitless growth potential. And so therefore, the longer we train, the more of the total muscle fibers we have, because of where they are in that chain, that sequence, have reached their maximum potential. And they just really stop growing from training. Right? They'll grow if you add drugs back into the mix. And that's a whole separate topic, isn't it? That says a lot about why higher volumes of training work so well with high doses of PEDs. Okay? See where we're going with that? Because we've now can raise the cap on the size of those muscle fibers again, which incidentally may reduce back down a bit when you come off. Okay, right? So what we find, this explains one reason why we run out of steam so quickly. I've done podcasts and discussions and roundtables over the years with different coaches, and we've discussed that. We noticed that as you get stronger, you can't replicate the exact same volumes as a percentage of your max anymore. In other words, if whatever you could do was, say, 3 sets of 10 at a percentage of your max at a certain point. When you squat 300 pounds, when you get to 500 pounds, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Right? I'm not saying you can't probably squat more for 10 reps than you did before. Of course you can. Your 3x10 will still be higher, but it won't be the same percentage anymore. It will not be. You won't be able to replicate it. All right? We've noticed that your total capacity to handle volume doesn't scale with strength. It goes up, but it doesn't scale. In other words, if your max strength on your squat goes up 100%, so let's say 225 up to 450, 100%, your work capacity, your tonnage, and your ability to squat will not go up 100% and be able to recover from it. You may not even be able to replicate it. In other words, what you could do for 3 sets of 20 back then, you won't be able to do that, double that anymore. It's not going to happen. And you sure won't be able to recover it from it if you try to. All right, this is probably a factor. It's probably an enormous factor. It also shows us that because those highest threshold fibers really just need to be gotten to quickly in sets, of one reason why we can't replicate the same volumes. We reach a certain threshold of metabolic fatigue, and the researchers suggested that because of that, it probably has to do with calcium ion concentrations. Things like that, stuff that is way too deep for most people, right? You don't have a biology background, you're no way you're going to understand that, other than to say that there are metabolic factors that are going to impact it. Okay, and that involves even your nervous system, its ability to have force output. Okay, so when we look at this, it starts to explain it better, that the longer you train, the more and more of the muscle that you do gain is higher and higher threshold muscle fibers. In other words, these are the ones that we're really getting later on. They don't take quite as much volume. We're better at recruiting them the longer we've been training. They require less total volume to fatigue because, again, everything else starts to turn more and more into junk volume, right? 10 rep sets, even 12 rep sets, it takes, how much of that set is wasted in not getting to those? It's oftentimes working intermediate fibers that we've already maxed out. Especially we get across too many sets. Sets start going up, we're not working upper threshold fibers at all. We're just eating into recovery. Now, if you're less advanced, what does that mean? Well, some of that extra volume is still causing hypertrophy. As you get more advanced, it's probably not, unless you're on drugs. Even then, there's got to be a finite limit. At a certain point, being on drugs will no longer produce that response either. It will be if you go on more drugs. Because that ceiling is going to raise for those fibers, but then it's going to cap again at that hormone level. But this explains a lot about the volume and intensity and everything else relationship that we see and the ability to recover from it as we get more and more and more advanced as lifters. It's really a fascinating topic. There's a lot of directions we could go with that. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.